Hey guys, so today we're doing kind of a weird video that we don't usually do, but we thought it pretty necessary considering all the stuff that's coming up with
Yeah.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
So we really wanted to just sit here and talk about all the issues because they seem to be coming out more and more, don't they? I mean, they're just
Yes.
flowing. They
It's
started and they
unstoppable.
won't stop.
Yep.
And
So we've
yeah.
kinda got a bunch of articles here talking about all some of the issues, not even we haven't even gotten into the some of the horrible graphical
Right.
issues and stuff, but,
And
yeah.
on top of this, we will be playing the game and kind of giving our first impressions. That video will probably got like next week. So yeah, that will be coming too. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of the problems considering we'll be playing it on PlayStation, not on PC.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The problems will probably be pretty glaring as they
Yeah.
seem to be. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So, let me just go ahead and pull up, this article. Alright, so for those that don't know, Cyberpunk has been pulled from the PlayStation Store, and there was actually an update to this article saying that, it hasn't been pulled from the Xbox Store, but they are offering refunds. So,
Oh,
I
I thought it
guess in
was
the
pulled from the Xbox store.
I from what I can read, at least in the update here, oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, at the bottom, there is an update somewhere. Whether or not it gets removed, Microsoft is now offering full refunds for the game on Xbox. Um, so they haven't pulled it just yet, as far as I know, but they are offering
Mm-hmm.
refunds. PlayStation, on the other hand, has completely pulled it from the store. Um, so of course, there were delays with the game already, but especially on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, like last gen consoles, performance is just terrible, and visuals are terrible, and the game's crashing, and textures aren't popping in, all kinds of stuff. So this article just goes into a little bit of detail about um, how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
That there's been games in the past like No Man's Sky and Fallout 76 that have
Mm-hmm.
been rough launches, but
Well, I mean, some things we need to add too is this game has been in development for 8 years, I think.
I think
It's
yeah,
by what is the company name?
CD Project
Yeah,
Red.
they're a huge company, made the Witcher series. They're
Yeah,
this is like the reason this is so huge is not just because PlayStation and them have decided to offer refunds, not only PlayStation, but the company themselves, the development company. But it's so big because this game has been highly anticipated. And we just made a podcast that'll be going out like this week about overhyped games. And
yeah. That was
Cyberpunk,
before this game
yeah,
officially came
that
out.
was before this officially came out. Said this fits right in that category of like
Yeah,
this has such been highly anticipated. Everybody wanted this game to be amazing. The things they
yeah,
had released about it have been amazing, and for it to be such a shit show,
yeah.
and to my recollection, this is kind of like video game history, like the fact that PlayStation, not even the development company
Well,
first started
right,
taking it off.
yeah. Well, this article talks about it and says that this is unprecedented. I think that's a good word for it because, like, this article points out, like, how often does this happen? Quite literally never with games
Yeah,
of this scale.
yeah.
So, like,
Right, yeah.
it's extremely rare for video games, even a terrible one, to be taken down from a
Mhm,
service like PlayStation Store. So there are bad games all the time that come out. They're never pulled from PlayStation Store unless there's, like, something illegal in them, you know? Like, Aliens Colonial Marines, for people that know anything about that, was super, super hyped and then absolutely bombed when it came out. No
mhm.
Man's Sky is another example. Fallout 76 is an example. And these are games that came out, people were extremely disappointed with them. Performance was terrible on some of them, and they weren't pulled from the store. And this game, I would say, arguably is even bigger than those games.
Mhm.
And for it to just be completely pulled out of the store is just crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so nuts to me that, like, this game has had nothing but good things said about it. Obviously pre-release, but even with,
right.
like, the review process that was kind of weird. We've talked about it a little bit, but, the review process, they wouldn't let you play it on console. You weren't allowed to use your own footage. You had to use
Right.
B-roll when talking about it. It's
Yes.
very I didn't know this stuff before, like, the game actually had come out. If I had known that, I'd have felt a little more sketchy about it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they knew that the game wasn't ready for console,
Right.
which is then why release it? And also,
Yeah.
why in the world did it take you 8 years and you're still not ready to release a game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, supposedly it is a huge game, and that's all fine and good, but
Yeah.
it's been delayed a few times already, and it feels like they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. And to consumers like us, we're obviously disappointed that a game is delayed, but if it's delayed to make it the best game it can be, it's
Mhm,
worth it.
mhm.
I,
Right,
I
yeah.
don't think that I don't think that anybody that truly loves video games would say, "Release it now. I don't care. I don't want to wait anymore." Like,
Mhm.
no, if you really want it to be the best it can be, then you'll wait on a delay,
Right.
and it sucks. Sure,
Yeah.
it's disappointing, whatever. But like, in my opinion, they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. But they really wanted those holiday sales.
Mhm. Yeah, they did.
They rushed it,
Absolutely,
and I'm
absolutely.
going to be talking about in a minute a little bit more about uh, the crunch and stuff, but the idea so there's supposed to be 2 massive patches in January and February. I think they'll lose a lot of players, potential players in that
Yeah.
amount of time. I think people will see all this stuff and just be like, "Nah, I don't wanna touch this game.
It'll be a
it's a
lot
dumpster
like,
fire."
it's I think it'll be like No Man's Sky, but on steroids. It wasn't
Mhm.
just that the game was bad on release. With No Man's Sky, that's how it was. People played the game, but they figured out that there wasn't enough to the game like they had been promised from the
Yeah.
developers. This
Yeah.
game has like they have offered so much and failed so hard, and the fact that it's even getting taken off the store, you're like losing a potential audience who would even stick around while the game is bad. Like I feel like No Man's
Right.
Sky people, there were people who played the game while they were updating it or whatever. Um, they've lost a lot of that because it's being taken off and people are, they're offering refunds. Who's not going to take the refund at this point? I mean, the
Right.
game is hardly playable, so why not take it? And then
Right.
why in the next year, why in like 3 months would those same people go, "Yeah, I'll pay $60 again for this
Right.
game that I returned."
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
no, if I'm gonna wait that long, it
Right,
better
yeah,
be a
yeah.
discount, yeah.
Yeah.
This article talks about well, first off, has it ever happened before? Batman Arkham Knight was supposedly taken well, not supposedly, it was taken out off of Steam because the PC version had issues, but that was actually Warner Brothers that pulled it. Like the fact that I mean, CD Projekt Red was offering refunds through their
Mhm.
website or something, I think, but they obviously can't just offer refunds through PlayStation's store.
Mhm.
Um, so it was up to Sony's decision whether or not to pull the game. Um, so it just doesn't happen. How will it affect sales? Well, it's no longer available on 2 major platforms. I mean, PlayStation 4, you literally cannot go buy it anymore. You go
Mhm.
to PlayStation 4's store and you search Cyberpunk, and it doesn't show up. It's not on there.
And I'd
Um,
imagine the PC part of their audience is not near big enough to be like
yeah, I mean,
profitable for making this game. I mean, PC, especially for a game like this, I feel like it is a very console oriented game. Like a game that I would like to play on console because it's not too, I don't know, with most shooters, I want to play it on PC because they seem so, particular in aim and stuff like that. Where this game feels more like a GTA where it's like, do whatever the heck you want to do in this world and all this stuff and create a character. And I feel like those games are very friendly for consoles and for
yeah.
a lot of console users are interested in these types of games. So I feel like they're
Oh
losing
yeah,
a huge majority of their audience.
yeah. I agree. I agree. And we mentioned earlier, we primarily mentioned like that you're losing PlayStation 4 because it's not even on the store. And like I said, it's still on the Xbox store, but I remember seeing a picture that somebody posted. When you go, if you want to go buy CD or Cyberpunk on the Xbox store, when you like add it to your cart or whatever, it pops up like a warning that's like, this game kind of sucks. Like, I don't know the exact wording on of it. I don't know what exactly it says, but
Yeah, if there's a
it basically
warning to a
warns you.
game.
It warns you before you buy a game. Like, have you ever heard of this? It's actually so bad. Here's another article. There's actually oh wait, that's the wrong one. This one, my bad. Um, CD Projekt Red is possibly facing a class action lawsuit because of what you talked about, Brett. So there was like a review embargo until
Mm,
the game released, which isn't super uncommon a lot of times if a big company, doesn't want there to be spoilers and stuff before the game comes out. Um, but this embargo not only said, um, I mean, you had to play on PC. There were no review codes sent out for console versions whatsoever.
Is that a common thing to do?
I
I don't feel
I
like
don't
that's a
really
common
think
thing to
so.
do. The only thing you could ever say is if it's an exclusive game. But
Yeah,
other than
yeah,
that, I don't think that most people are very like most development companies are too specific if they're releasing it on multiple platforms.
mm-mm,
I feel like they would let any reviewer use what they wanted, which adds a little bit of sketchiness. I do think that them wanting to use their footage isn't too weird because you're
yes.
right. Because if this is a very like story oriented and there's like some things in the game that they don't want people to know about until they play it,
Well,
and that's perfectly fine. Um,
the type of embargoes that you see most often, like I'm not even that big a fan of it, but like The Last of Us 2 was an example. Was It's a very story-driven game too, obviously. But what they said was you can post whatever footage you want, but only up to like 40% of the game being done.
mhm,
Like 40% through the campaign. So
right.
that's like that way there's no like in-game spoilers and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I'm more okay with that. But just it seems so shady for them to be like, you have to use our footage, which is, basically cutscene footage and some,
Right. Which
stock,
also Cyberpunk
B-roll.
being a lot like GTA in my opinion, you would think there's other stuff that they could do. Like I'm driving in a car. Like, how is that giving away too much about the
Yeah.
game by just showing me going around the car or just being around in the city? I don't feel like
Yeah.
that gives anything away to the story that people would no longer want to play the game. It kind of just shows off from another perspective, or they can kind of. And another thing, I feel for reviewers because they can't show what they're talking about. Like it's easier to talk about stuff when you're actually being able to show it. You know,
Right.
when I have to sit here
Yeah,
and
so
explain what's going on when a cool cinematic trailer is going on in
yeah,
the background.
it just seems
Yeah,
dishonest.
it
It
does.
really
It
does. It
does.
it seems like they obviously had to know what state that the
Mhm.
current gen consoles were
Mhm.
in with these games. They had to. The fact that they said, "Oh, only review PC, we're not giving out any codes for console." It's just it's not necessarily like if they had only done just one of these things, like said just use our stock B-roll footage or whatever it's called,
Mhm.
or just said only PC codes are being sent out. But it's like the combination of both of those things just seems really shady. And I don't think gamers are um, they're not snowed by this.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's why there's talks of this class action
Keanu
lawsuit.
Reeves isn't gonna sell this one for him.
I mean, look at this. Look at this.
Yeah.
This is like a character model before the textures I've loaded in. I mean, that just looks
It's just ridiculous.
ridiculous. So,
And I've
um,
seen games that are in alpha that kinda do that, but
yeah,
usually finished product games will have that
$60.
occasionally, but if you're talking like a big company, a big
Yeah,
game, very anticipated, it's it's hard to forgive these kinds of mistakes, at all. I mean, people were
mm,
super unforgiving with No Man's Sky, and I feel it wasn't a big development company.
no,
So,
no,
how much forgiveness can you have for someone who has the ability to put a lot of time and money into a game and then screws up this
yeah,
bad?
yeah,
Um, it's
yeah,
just it makes the selling point for the game later on almost impossible. I
yeah,
can't even imagine trying to market this game later. Um,
yeah. No, I mean, like, oh, hey, we fixed it now. Like, what do
this
you
game
say?
that you all hated because our models wouldn't load, all these bugs were in the game. Yeah, they're all gone.
They need to just say, listen, we messed up. We're fixing it. We hope you stay with us until it's officially ready.
But here's the question: do you
Like
think they'll do
admit you
that?
messed it up. No.
That's what I was gonna say. Is as much
Hello
as we
Games, I
want
think
that,
was
yeah,
No Man's Sky who made or Games, I think made No Man's Sky. I think was their name. Um, it took them a little while to admit that hey, we didn't really give you the game you were
right.
expecting or the game
Hmm.
that we even were trying. They were releasing all this material about it, and it looked so much better than the final product. It was just it was dishonest seeming, and it took them a while, I think, to admit that hey, we didn't really release the game you wanted or
Right.
expected,
Yeah.
but they are still working to this day trying to fix it. And um, there's an issue with just I mean, nobody wants to hang around if you're just not going to tell the truth that you screwed over your
Yeah. Yeah.
entire, like you screwed over all of your. customers. That just it doesn't work. But
Which makes me
yeah,
wonder, and I think you said something about this, and I think we're actually gonna get to an article about it, of, like, the higher ups pushing them to release this game. And
yes,
you how imagine being someone who has worked on this game and you're very passionate about it and you love what you've done. It's just not ready yet, and being
yeah,
forced to like I feel like it feels that way. And I feel for the people who had to do that. I mean, that would suck to see a passion project or something you care about have to go out and get absolutely shit on, but it wasn't
yeah.
your fault. Like you weren't trying to let it out too early.
Yeah,
Um,
and it makes the developers look bad because the
mhm.
developers are the
Oh
ones that are
yeah.
making the game.
Yeah,
In this
absolutely.
particular situation, I don't think that's the case. Like this article from Bloomberg, and it's by Jason Schreier, which if anybody knows who he is, he's a gaming journalist that is not afraid to
Speak
just
his
tell the
mind.
truth. Yeah, oh, he is not afraid at all.
Yeah.
But apparently, the employees or the developers rather are upset at the higher ups for forcing crunch and uh, like knowing that there really isn't enough time to
Right,
finish.
yeah.
So developers ask blunt questions about the company's reputation, the game's unrealistic deadlines, and the relentless overtime in the months and years leading up to the game's release. So of course, this was in response to PlayStation pulling the game.
Mhm.
Of course, it's full of bugs, especially on the last gen consoles. But it says here during the development, staff endured multiple periods of extensive overtime, including mandatory 6-day weeks to finish the game. Um, Directors supposedly said they had plans to improve the practices, but didn't. Like it's almost like, oh yeah, we'll fix it. I know we're crunching right now, but we'll fix it. But then kind of like didn't.
Yep.
um,
Good excuse.
so
Hey, we wanted to fix it, we just didn't.
one one thing I thought was interesting. Oh, apparently the board said the game was complete and playable in like press releases and stuff.
Mhm.
So that the developers asked why they lied about that. The board answered it would take responsibility, whatever that means.
Was it released on, new gen? Like
Yeah, what?
Xbox?
No, no. It's apparently there's going to be an Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 version released sometime next year, but at this point,
It almost makes
it's
it
just
feel like they should have waited to release it just because they should have waited for next gen because 'cause they're in
yeah.
this
Well, they
awkward
should, but
position.
they wouldn't get Christmas sales that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but like
Well,
if you
now
play
they
on
ain't gonna get
PlayStation
no
5,
sales at all.
that's true. They're going to get nothing.
Impatience, man.
So the way I understand it is PlayStation 5 and Series X plays the like older version, but it
Mhm.
just runs it better because it's more powerful or whatever.
Yeah.
Similar to the way that like PS4 Pro and Xbox One X run a little bit better
Mhm.
than
Right, yeah.
PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Mhm.
But the funny part about this one, funny kind of, but sad at the same time. So another developer asked whether CD Projekt's directors felt it was hypocritical to make a game about corporate exploitation while expecting their employees work overtime. So it's funny, but it's not funny. It's
It's
sad. It's
yeah,
sad for them.
it is. Um,
So I mean, I hear horror stories a lot about games going into like severe crunch towards the
mhm.
end because they're trying to push this due date. And it's just sad
Mhm, mhm.
that these employees are exploited like that.
Especially because you would think it's like a dream job to work at, like, a gaming company, a
Mhm.
game development company, and I'm sure it is a dream job for some people, but, like, to have that constant pressure
Like
to
yeah,
push
to like
yourself past of, like and at that point, you have to wonder, like, quality is obviously gonna get kind of crunched as well, because if you
right.
can't sit here and take the time to do the details, then you're gonna miss
Yeah.
out on a lot of things
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
8 years, man, it's kinda crazy to me. I know it's a huge game. I really understand, and it's a very detailed game,
Yeah.
but holy crap.
Yeah.
You would figure, it would, be a little more functional within the 8-year time, that it was given.
It's obvious there was something. I mean, the board was saying it was playable and complete.
Yep,
Obviously, that was not true.
yep.
Like, what exactly there isn't a lot of detail. What exactly is going behind the scenes there? Like, a game like Anthem, there was after the game came out and it, like, bombed in a very similar way, Um, there was a lot of information released, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after it came out,
Mhm.
that the like development was pretty tumultuous, and like, yeah, it was in development for like 6, 7 years, but they really didn't even know what type of game it was going to be up until the last year or so, year and a half. So I mean, saying that the game had been in development for 6 years was just untrue. It was tossed around and
Yeah.
uh, aimless for 5 years, and then finally they decided to figure out what they wanted to do. So it makes me wonder, like, what have they been doing for 8 years? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and if they did need more time, which still is kinda crazy, 8 years you'd think it'd be enough time, but if they needed more time, then that should have been what happened. Yeah, it
Yeah,
made some people mad that they delayed it again, but it at least come out an actual game,
right.
and it would have saved them the shit show that's going on right now.
Yeah,
Um,
and people that are playing on PC, which is, although not perfect, the best state that the game can be in,
mhm.
are actually saying that, the story is incredible, the voice acting is incredible, it's fun, the
Yeah,
combat is
so
fun,
it's
the
sad.
exploration is
It's
fun, the
sad.
quests are fun, everything about it is fun except for the performance and the glitches and stuff like that. So it makes me sad that this could potentially be
Right.
a true game of the year if they had let it cook a little longer. But
Yeah, that is very sad to see a game die for just like dumb reasons. It is really stupid for a game to die for the reasons of rushing it for
mhm,
sales because now they've put themselves in such a way that they will get like hardly any sales.
yeah,
Probably not even a quarter of what they probably would have gotten if the game was working and fine and like was out right now.
yeah,
Not even a quarter. I can't even count how many people. I don't know how many people will actually go back
yeah. I don't
once they
know.
fix it. It's just
A fraction of the
unless unless they say we screwed up.
yeah,
All
right.
right, we're
Which
sorry.
even still
They're
with
still gonna lose, yes, but the
yeah, a lot.
honesty to
Yeah,
me matters, and if they're
yeah,
gonna honestly come to us, and as their consumers, as the people they want to buy their game, and they can honestly tell us, "You know what? We really messed up, but we hope that these updates help it, and we really care about this game." You don't feel I don't feel like there's a lot of caring for the game when stuff like this happens. Like, do they really care about the product they're letting out if they do some really shady shit like this?
and
And
I think the developers do, because it's
right, yeah.
obvious that the game has a lot of detail, and the dialogue is
Mhm.
well written, and so there's a lot of care put into the details. It's just there wasn't enough time for whatever reason, and so I think that, you know it's obvious that with the developers asking questions like this, that it wasn't all them. Like, I'm not saying that
Right, yeah.
every single developer was altruistic, but it's obvious that they have issues with their higher ups. And as a matter of fact, this article discusses one particular lead, CD Project Red studio head Adam Bukowski. Hasn't come right out and said anything particularly bad, but on Twitter he's been liking a lot of not so good tweets with this, particularly directed toward Sony's decision to pull the game out
Mhm.
of the store. So I think it's just supporting this idea that it wasn't really the developers, and the developers had issues
Mhm.
with some of the things that the higher ups were choosing. Um, so one of the tweets that he liked was one that said it was cute that Sony was pulling the game from the store, that the issue had been blown out of proportion. So obviously not taking responsibility for
Mhm.
what he caused his developers
Yeah,
to release
it's
unfinished. Um, Another claims that Marvel's Avengers came out in an even worse state, but Sony did nothing about it. I really don't think that's even true. Marvel's
it may
Avengers
yeah.
was buggy and maybe
And
unfun,
and
and
not that great of a game in
yeah,
general. But that yeah, and it was buggy. I did see some bugs in it, but not even close to the things
no,
I've seen in Cyberpunk.
no,
And there was still an audience that played Avengers. And I mean,
yeah,
could you I don't even know there wouldn't be an audience for this game even if they didn't take it out of the store. I feel like the amount of people who would play this game is very small.
hmm
Um, just because if they're not going to deliver on the game they wanted to give or what they offered, what they said they were going to give, then
yeah. So So his liked tweets, quote, point to a general sense of injustice and victimhood. It's clear he doesn't think the game should have been removed. So we could probably put these links in the description so people can read them for themselves. But
Yeah, I'll put the articles in.
um, it's just not taking responsibility.
Mhm. Which makes it even more evident the fact that they will not come out and say, "We messed up." Like,
Yeah,
this kind of behavior here, it just which is kind of surprising to me. Because does he think this is helping at
he
all?
couldn't. He couldn't. I
And
mean,
it's like defending a murderer who
yeah.
murdered somebody right in front of the judge and the jury.
It's like it's not that bad.
How do you defend that? Like, you need to just be like, "Yeah, I murdered him." Or like, "Yeah, he murdered him. He messed up."
And while I'm not saying that all of the project leads and like all of the higher ups have this opinion, but if the developers are asking questions about their own leaders and one of the leaders is liking tweets like this, it's just kind of indicative
Mm,
of the mindset of these guys.
yep.
So
Yeah, it's not assumption, it's just like, it's not that we're assuming, "Oh, because they're the evil higher ups, the
yeah,
money hungry,
yeah,
businessmen." It's like they're showing themselves, to everyone. It's not like they're just talking amongst themselves. He's putting this on social media, like, people are gonna see this, and it definitely affects how the game will go, especially now that it's got an uphill battle, and, it's even worse now. You lose
for sure.
credibility when you,
Yeah, and
um,
and a company
do
like
that.
CD Projekt Red, where they've always been talked about one of the most consumer friendly companies.
Mhm.
They've always been like the company that would never do crunch. Like I remember people talking about that before this game came out. I think they may have even said at one point there was never going to be crunch for this game. I'm not 100% sure on that, but people always talked very highly about this company kind of being like
Right,
the anti EA, like the anti Activision, the guys that
right.
like always make sure that they release games with $60 worth of content, if not more, releasing DLCs that were well priced but super heavy in the content,
Mhm,
not exploitative,
mhm.
no microtransactions. It's sad to see them do this and release a
Right.
game unfinished, which is very, very against what they've stood for
Mhm, mhm.
as a company. So
Yeah. It is very sad, especially because if it really is a great game, which I'm sure it is. I'm sure there's a lot of great stuff in that game. I'm sure it's fun. The story sounds like it's gonna be really good. I just, there the higher ups are just going to ruin this for him,
yeah,
completely, and it's sad, which makes it like this is why a lot of times we've talked about this before that indie companies, um, though they have a harder time selling to a huge audience, a lot of times they end up doing better in the content wise because there is no crunch. This is our passion. If it's going to take us 15 years, it is. There was a indie game let out called Owlboy.
yeah, oh yeah, I
It's
played it.
and people love it. It took them like
Hmm.
they said like 9 or 10 years,
Hmm.
and yeah, they didn't release it till they wanted to, and I
And
feel
it's
like
really
these
good.
bigger developers are getting, or at least maybe their higher ups, since they have become so successful,
Yeah.
have this mentality of just we just got to get it out. We just got to get it out. Get the money now, so we can get to the next project, and it ruins
Hmm.
it. It can ruin the project completely, whether it's
Yeah.
a good idea or not. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And I mean, I think indie games are a good place to look too because there are some really, really successful indie games
Hmm.
that who knows where they would actually be if they had had an EA or an Activision, or unfortunately now I can include CD Projekt Red in the list of if that game were being developed by one of those companies, would the game be anywhere near as successful or popular? Probably not, because they might have
Not as hyped, definitely. There wouldn't
not
be
as
much
hyped.
around it before it came out, but
So I hate
yeah.
I hate to see it, but I hope they get their act together, and I hope they fix the game, and hopefully, I mean, I don't want to say it's almost like I want to say hurry up and get it fixed. Like, no, I'm not
No,
saying that either.
no,
Like,
no. Yeah.
they need to take their time, and however long it takes to get it into as good of a state as it can get is what they need to do. So
Yep. I
Is
agree.
there anything you want to say before we move on to the meme?
Oh no, I forgot about that. Okay, yeah. No, I'm good. Yeah, I think you
This
wrapped it up well. They just
so
need to get their act together and
um
oh my gosh, this is awful.
so there's been there's been a lot of memes going around of character, I don't know, cars disappearing through the ground
Mhm.
and characters without their facial textures loaded and stuff. And I thought this was a fitting way to put it. So, way to end this, I meant. So back in 2018, June of 2018, um, Cyberpunk game Twitter, the official Twitter, released this with some weird text or whatever, and a
Mhm.
cut scene that kind of showed off the graphics of the game. It's all fine and good. 102,000 likes, 45,000 retweets. Are they what are they called? Favorites on Twitter, whatever. Anyway, so somebody commented and said, "Dear Cyberpunk game, will there be memes in the game? Memes of the future. There has to be memes." And they aptly responded with, "Whole game is going to be a meme." And they achieved that in the exact way they did not mean that.
Yeah, it is the exact opposite. Like it's a meme, just not the way you want to be put as a meme. There's two kinds. There's an intentional funny meme that everybody thinks is funny, and then there's the meme where it inconveniences that one person. It inconveniences them so hard, but it's hilarious to everybody else. It's like they they messed up so bad that it is a meme. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
there's some memes that are like, it's so goofy that it's awesome.
yeah.
And then there are some memes that's like, it's so bad that let's all point
Yeah,
it
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
laugh
yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, they,
that's kind of what's going on now. But
yeah,
yeah, thought that was a fitting end. So
yeah, it is very fitting. So yeah, that's we just want to talk about that because it's just coming out left and right, and we didn't think it would. We didn't want to wait for a podcast for it to come out, a week or two later. So we were just wanting to
yeah,
put a video out. But let us know what you all think about the cyberpunk stuff if you care. If what do you all think about it? We think
let us know
it's
if you bought it. Let us
yeah,
know what you think of the
yeah.
game. If
If
you feel
they've
the
if
same
yeah,
way.
if
If
you've
you
seen a lot of the glitches or if it's just kind of been a smooth especially if you're playing on PC, maybe it's a little more smooth sailing for the game.
yeah,
But yeah,
who
thanks for
knows? But
watching and we'll see you all next time.
yep, thanks guys.